Hey, Jackie.
Hi. I got your email last night.
Oh, good. We want everybody to fill out that census.
We do. This is our plug. We can't hear you, Pune.
Is that why no one was answering my question?
We were just ignoring you.
That's true.
Yeah, early on when I started involving like distance teaching, I didn't know that it reflected your image. So like if you wrote on a board, which I was doing, it looked backwards to me. And so I told the group, I was like, well, this is backwards. And so I figured out how to flip it around. And we did a 2-hour class. And then they never told me that it was backwards to them once I flipped it. So when I went and looked at the video later, we had like a guest presenter and stuff. It's all for Tlingit. And I came the next class. I was like, why did you guys tell me that was backwards after I flipped it? I'm like, I don't know. Okay, anybody got any questions? Any language related questions? Things you've been thinking about? Things you want to share?
A language related question. So, and I've been thinking about this because I don't know what to. So, if let me see if I can find it first. So, an answer to wasakuati, and if I was going to say, I'm trying to figure out how to say it, and I don't think this is right. Siu dak wusitan, ka siu dak wusitan, tatgi, ka sigan siu dak guksitan shakde. So what I was trying to say was, it rained today, it rained yesterday, and it's gonna rain tomorrow, or probably rain tomorrow. Is that right?
That's correct.
Huh?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay. And we don't have to, we're just going to do away with the whole weather chapter. And all I got to do is learn rain. And then
Exactly.
yes, that's absolutely correct. That was great. Yeah. And so you'll notice there are some verbs in Tlingit. You'd say it the same for right now as yesterday. And this just comes down to Tlingit does not change verbs for time. Tlingit changes verbs for event, which is just kind of wild. It's just interesting to think about. And it's not like Tlingit doesn't worry about time. It's just that that's not the reason why the verbs change. Instead, the verbs change to say, okay, well, let's talk about whether or not it has happened. And some things, even if it's right now, it's already happened. And that's the Tlingit way of seeing it. Like when you say, Khwasaku, for I know it, it has this little, when you see there's this W in there, that's the thing that pushes it into it's already happened territory. So you can't say there's no, and so when we'll say like past tense, present tense, future tense in English, but they're a little bit different in Tlingit. So that's why you'd say siu, so siu dak, so there's the two parts, right? So siu is the rain, dak is like for it to fall. Then you'll say wusitan. So there's the verb part right there. Wusitan, wusitan, guksitan. And so it changes for the future. And you'll run into a few verbs that are like that, right? And so this is why when you say things like yake ichsatini, that W sound has to be in there, even though it's happening right now. You know, it's just, it's fun stuff. Ooh,
I have a Tlingit language question for you, Achone. Can you guys hear me okay? There is a couple words that I've been trying to remember for a decade, and I can't get the answer for. One is for when you see the mist over around the moon and the mist coming off the water, and you know there's going to be a cold day the next day. There's a word for
He's
that.
downstairs, Mom.
Oh, good, okay.
And there's a word for when the salmon bite the banks so the fry can follow that path. Do you know those two words? Because it's driving me crazy. I used to know it from Joe and Smitty, and I want to know them again.
I'm gonna have to dig for those ones. I heard Joe talk about that. It's like right before they, especially before they release the eggs, the females will bite the bank so that they can code that information for their babies to come back. And I heard him, but that was, yeah, it was before I was smart enough to write things down when I heard them. I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, and so I'll try and ask around through some of the chains that I have. And if you folks know speakers, those are two really good questions. So it's a haze or a ring kind of around the moon. Is that right?
Yeah. If you see like a mist around the moon, like a haze, like you're saying, and you see a bit of a mist coming off, like in my case in Klukwan, the river, you'll know that the next day it's going to be much colder. And they taught us that so we can watch what the day is going to be like in the following days for if you're smoking fish or whatever you might be doing to prepare for the next day. Okay. And it works pretty good. But the words I can't, I've asked, but they're sometimes having a harder time remembering certain specific, right, unless they think about it for a while. So.
Okay, I will. Yeah, I'll look around. Those are good questions. Anybody else got a question?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when is the appropriate time to use how? Like, can you use how as a greeting? Is it like a surprised greeting? I've sort of heard it used in many different contexts. I'm trying to figure out exactly when the time to use it would be.
The Tlingit word, how?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think it's H-A-A-W.
Yeah, it's H-A-A-W. And so the English equivalent is when someone says, well, and then it's so they're going to pause, right? So it's a pretty similar thing to that. So when you see someone, you can say, how? And it's kind of being a little silly, right? And then, but if somebody, you'll notice storytellers, and different storytellers have their different ways to pause. And none of them say, not the real old school ones, right? So they'll say, oh, what? And then they'll have a pause, and then they'll keep talking. Or they'll say, how? And then they'll pause, and then they'll keep talking. So then there's, so it could be like, let me take a minute to think about this, or maybe my Zoom is freezing, so I'll be like, how? But then there's kind of a related one, which is usually we'll write it H, high-toned A, and an apostrophe. Because so you can have an apostrophe right at the end of a word. It's not very common, and so technically would write like a period usually, like Yana 8. But if it's at the end of the word, then sometimes we'll often write it as an apostrophe, similar to Haida does nowadays with like how. So there was an apostrophe right in the middle, because you wouldn't know if it's at the end of the sentence or whatever. And so, so H, high tone A, apostrophe is ha, and that's a mild surprise. So I'm mildly surprised. But how? So that's when you can use if something makes you think a little bit. And so that's kind of what's going on. Like you see someone and you're like, how? Let me think about that for a second. And that's why it's kind of funny. And so sometimes there's kind of silly things people say when they see each other.
Because like, every time I'd walk in the room.
So I'm gonna drop that.
I have a question about how to make I found nouns and adjectives, but to make it a sentence. So in the chat, Peter Ajine Kalias Kitk Anagat. And I have his picture because I'm talking about this, Ginny.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so far it's not a sentence. It's just, I sound like I'm 3 years old.
Also, if it's his arm, you just say Peter Jin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple things, like once you
Right.
say Ginny, Peter's lost his arm and it's sitting there. And so
Okay.
that's what we're going to learn this semester, is how to put a possessive marker onto a noun. Like, this is my thing, this is your thing. And then what we'll realize is that doesn't go onto body parts unless they've been removed.
Okay.
And so we had a lot of fun when we were figuring this out with some of the elders, because we're like, and then they said it has to belong to somebody, right? So the on there is usually it's. So that's when you're using like a non-human thing, like a frog or a bear or something. You'd say a jin, and that would be its hand. And so is the non-human equivalent of du. So you just say du jin, du sha, du walk. But if you have their name in there, you say khone jin, ku walk. So Kate walk. You could do that too. And then you guys get to decide if a dog is a person or not. I can tell you which one it is. You can say do all you want for your doggies and cats, whatever. And sometimes if they're telling the stories where people see the animals as people, it'll switch to do. But a lot of times it'll be And then if, like let's say we had Ishan, we had a rabbit and something happened and it lost its leg. So then you could say Jinni.
Rose.
Oh, where did I freeze? Rabbit? Did I say rabbit yet?
You said rabbit.
Okay, so if you had a rabbit, or if there was a rabbit and it lost its arm, you would say Jinni. And so the I comes on it because it's been removed.
Oh.
Or if you had like a little, remember people used to carry like rabbit's feet? I don't know if they still do that. They're like the lucky rabbit's foot. So that would be Jinni, because it's removed.
Oh. Okay, I think I found it when I was looking for sleeve.
Okay, well that would work. Yeah, so kudas Jinni, that would work.
Kudas. All right, I put the kudas in there.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise
it's rainbow stripes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question in regards to that too. So are you saying if I said tukataki, I'm referring to my pants that are not on?
Well, no, pants. No, those are just pants. They'll get possessed. So nouns, it's not about whether they're on or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But do keep your pants on.
Yeah, my pants are on. Don't worry.
But yeah, so nouns. So yeah, tukatash and tukatashi. Usually those are belonging to someone. So then you're going to expect my or his or her or something right before it.
Like Kadenwe Shawat Kudatsi.
Okay, good questions.
Geez.
Okay, so I thought tonight we'll maybe back it up a step. I'm getting a little feedback on the microphone here. I don't know what's going on. I'll just try muting. Feel free to unmute yourself, but I might, if I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if I froze again. But okay, we'll just see how it goes. I don't know. I guess Tuesday and Thursday nights are the busy nights. I don't know what's going on. So I thought tonight would back up and we'll just make the sounds. We'll go over everything in chapter 1 for beginning Tlingit, and then we'll move through chapter 2. We'll see how we do. And then there's a book called Little Readings in Tlingit, which some of you might have done already. It's a really neat book, and we'll just sort of start going through that as well. And then what our basic sort of habit is going to be starting off with, if you have any questions, and then we'll answer your questions and we'll move into our lessons. And if you feel like you're at a point where you can start putting language together and you would like to share some with us, feel free to. Like, that's a good way to start the class. And the further along we go, the more that we're going to expect that. And then I think Tuesday we'll do our water animal challenge. And don't get wild and start telling me that a deer is a water animal and stuff like that, because I'll have to, and we had a lot of birds creeping in when we were doing land animals. That's fine. That's fine. Somebody made a comment on the YouTube video about laughing about the octopus, and so yeah, okay, whatever. You can make your case, I guess. If you feel like you need to make your case, go ahead. And then it'll be fun because someday we'll be having these intense debates all in Tlingit about whether a frog is a water animal or a land animal. Okay, so does that sound okay? Sound okay to everybody? Okay, so that's the goal for tonight. So you've probably done all the sounds before, but we're just gonna sort of go through these and then talk about some of the concepts in beginning Tlingit. And if I freeze, somebody just say, you're frozen, or just say, you're frozen. Okay, so front of the lips, there's not very much. There's only 2 sounds that are up that far. And so I think we went over this a little bit. We're just gonna add a vowel, either mostly to right after the letter, but then otherwise it'll come. There might be, if you see a hyphen right there, then the vowel will come before. Just remember, when you look at this, every time you see this, it's going to make that same sound. And so if spelling is a little tricky for you in reading and writing, then just be thinking about that. Like when you see this W, it will always be the same sound, right? Wa. Oh, I'll make it and then you guys repeat. Wa. Wasus.
Wasus.
Ma.
Ma.
Masus. And nobody says mas.
Masus.
Masus is not an actual Tlingit word. Just so
What
y'all.
about calm down?
Okay, so now right behind the teeth, whole bunch of sounds right here. Cha,
Cha.
cheech.
Cheech.
That's just a regular CH sound. Ch, ch, ch. But once we put this apostrophe there, now you got to make that same sound without your lungs. Okay, so without your lungs, you get cha,
Cha.
eat.
Eat.
And so in English, you're not usually turning your lungs off, right? But in Tlingit, it's a regular thing. And so when some people first start learning, and as you start teaching other folks, which I hope you all become teachers and go teach people Tlingit, that's just something that you focus on. And don't worry about it, because folks are going to go eat. There'll be a little gap right after that sound, but we want it to go eat. They just run right into each other. But that's what that apostrophe is doing. And again, just sort of thinking about spelling, this is a 3-letter word. Eat, right? Da.
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 Gla.
Gla.
Let me move that, okay. So this one very commonly turns into a G and an English L, like in the word glad. So we just want to sort of make our adjustments there. There is a word gla, D-L, high-toned, long A. And it's like, it's a young person from Cake, she translated as can't even. And I was like, oh, that's a great translation. Sometimes people say hadla. It's too much. You're taking your jokes too far. There's all kinds of things, right? It could mean shame on you. It could mean teasing. It depends. Like, it's one of those words that has lots and lots of meanings. But a lot of times you'll hear it as gla, right, with a G. And so it should be this d meets sort of like this word. Whoops. Glate.
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 Play.
So this one is in there because just like I was hanging out with some friends and we all learn and speak and use Tlingit, and they said they went to a conference and this guy had a name tag and they were like, who the heck is Nash? And his name was Neil. Of course his name was Neil. So, yeah, some fun. Okay, so the D and the Z. Z.
Duh.
Z.
Duh.
Duh.
That D is very subtle, but it is there. Zait.
Zate.
Zait.
Zate.
Three-letter word, one consonant, DZ, one vowel, EI, one consonant, T. Zait. So when you're spelling in Tlingit, you're counting those sounds. How many sounds are in that word? And every sound gets one letter. Ja.
Ja.
Junwu.
Jun.
Junwu.
But if you are in, let me try and remember. If you're in Teslin, you'll call it Janu.
Where?
If you're in Carcross, you call it
Oh, yeah.
Jun.
Jun.
If you're in Yakutat, you'll call it Jinwu.
I couldn't hear who says Jenu. I know we say that here in Kluckwan sometimes.
Janu is Teslin.
Oh,
There's quite a
interesting.
few things that Kluckwan and inland speakers share.
Huh.
It's smaller.
And then Jun is Carcross. Not all speakers, but some of them. Some of them will say Janu, some of them will say Jun. And then Jinwu is Yakutat. Okay, so this one is in the front of Tlingit, right? Which is why it's spelled with a T and pronounced with a K. If we're writing in Tlingit and we're speaking Tlingit, this is how we write it. This is how we say it. It's both a noun and an adjective. As a noun, it usually means a human being. It could also mean a Tlingit person, a person of Tlingit ethnicity. As an adjective, it means it's the Tlingit type of thing, and it depends how it's being used. So you can say Tlingit Kusti, Tlingit culture, but there's a few different words that are just kind of interesting, like long time ago, that used to be a little crabapple. It grows around here. But for whatever reason, when some other folks came here and they brought a bigger apple, we started calling that one and the crab apple Tlingit, the Tlingit's apple, right? There's another one that happened to the hen grouse, now but not for all speakers, but for some speakers, is now chicken, and Tlingit is the hen grouse or the spruce grouse. But for other speakers, is still the spruce grouse, and yadi, which would be a child spruce grouse, is chicken. So it's interesting, like seeing how this stuff works. But this sound, so we should never be going la, that sound. That does not exist in Tlingit. However, there are speakers we know of, including my great-grandpa, who, when there was an L sound, a lot of times they would make that voiced L. So there's an animal called naq, and they would call it laq. I don't know. So my great-grandpa, Shukach Adi, he was talking about a place called Tanani, which is out there where the tank farm used to be in Haines. And he's talking and he said, Tal Ali. And then she was recording him. She said, Tan Ani again. And he says, Tal Ali. So it's pretty unusual. I've only heard of two who did that. But this sound should be shla.
Yeah.
Shla.
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 So if you've been around Tlingit, you know that sound. If you have trouble with this sound at all, or you're working with people who do have trouble, the mechanics of it is you put your tongue in the same place as the voiced L, la, la, la. But you've got to relax your teeth, blow out the sides. This is also the same sound that people make if they have a lisp. So a lisp, right? It's that same sound. So here's the word. Shoosh,
Shoosh.
shoosh.
Swoosh.
Another 3-letter word, right? 1 sound, 2 sound, 3 sound. So to make that sound without using your lungs, this one is pretty tricky for a lot of folks. So this one, it goes out the sides. So you're basically putting your tongue right behind your teeth, like you're gonna make that sound, but instead of pushing the air through, you're gonna squish it kind of out the sides, and you're gonna end up with ah.
Shla.
Ah.
Shla.
Ah.
Shla.
Ah. This is the one where if you're looking right at someone, you're gonna spit some food at them. Those types of things are gonna happen. It helps with this sound and the X apostrophe to have some saliva, kind of, your mouth's gotta have some stuff going on. And so whenever you're doing sound practice, good idea to have tea or coffee or water, juice. I'd have students and they'd line up like this pile of sour Skittles and they'd just munch sour Skittles, and that would help them keep their mouth kind of with a lot of spit in it. So then you get ook, 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 Coho. So that's where the name Chuknach Adi comes from. And Nach, and Ut, and I. So the clan names usually pretty much always refer to a specific place. So there's a place called Chuknach. There's a place called Siknach. And so the Nach part is like a narrow bay with really tall kind of sides, like a fjord. I think you call it a fjord. So with Shuk, we get our little joke break. So here's Lego Darth Vader. He says, "Yisuku ushwik kwan shetsini keshliin hasakawaniki ishtad." So if you only knew the power of the people of darkness, the strength of them, they never told you about your father. That could have been a 4th person verb, like nobody ever told you, but in this case, they. Then he says, Shuk. So there's the joke, right? I'm your father. And then Shuk says, Flake. So that's no. It's impossible. Okay. Na.
Na.
Nusk.
Noose.
So here's that KW, right? So without that W, it'd be Nusk. So my lips would be just kind of almost pulled into a smile. So this is what there's these 2 sounds, right? The Y and the W. The Y makes you kind of do a smiley thing. The W makes you do a kissy face thing. So you're gonna go like that or like that. So when the W is after the K, or any of the X or the, you're gonna have this little at the end, almost like you're gonna blow out a little candle right at the end. So you're gonna get Nusk.
Noose.
But then we say, anybody want to count the letters for us? What do you think?
4.
Yeah, da, and this is a vowel, right? Even though there's 2 characters there. That's 1 letter in Tlingit. Then the S, then the KW. And those are our sounds, right? It's 4 sounds in that word. Because this KW is a combined. Okay. Sa.
Sa.
Seek.
Seek.
Sa. Speak.
Seek.
So when you're learning Tlingit, I think we pay a lot of attention to the consonants because there's a whole bunch of wild sounds that we haven't made before, like these pinched ones, and we're going to go into the gutturals and these other things. But the vowels, you've got to pay attention to the vowels. You know, and there's 4 options. There's going to be short and low, short and high, long and low, long and high. So this one, speak. So it's got to be long and it's got to be low. Sha.
Sha.
Shaw.
Shaw.
So that one has to stay low. If it goes high, now you're talking about women. Ta.
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 Tia.
Tia.
Yeah.
And let me just see, what do you folks know about these words that end with these 2 A's like that? Tia, gukha, khasha.
Lita.
Hita, hita.
Just so like, is that what they just use on objects mostly?
So this
Something in
is,
front of you?
Something that cuts or carves.
yeah, so
Right in front of you.
there's, when we look at Tlingit, some of these things have a really short name. Nusk, Speak, right? So that name doesn't, the words don't mean other things, right? That's just the thing, yesh, talk. But then there's other things that get these, what we call a compound, where there's a few words that get put together. Like ganda dagugu is a woodpecker, and it's pecks around the wood. That's what its name means. And so some of them, they get names that mean things. One of the theories is that when Tlingits, when they were making this language and migrating to this area, that they had names for things. And then as new things showed up, they're like, what are we going to call that thing? And then they would cook up a name based on what it looks like or what it does. That's what one of these things are. But this is a special type of compound. So this ah means the one or the ones. And it could be interpreted as some of them, right? So you could say ah huacha, I ate some of them, right? And so Tlingit has a special sort of set of pronouns for that. But what happens here is it jumps over the verb. So this is, when you have this, it's usually a verb root and then this ah at the end. So it's the one that does this verb. And this verb ti is to chisel. So you could say awati, she or he chiseled with a straight chisel. So that's what the tia is. That's how that name gets made. And you're going to see there's a whole set of them. Okay. Tia.
Tia.
Ta.
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 So we got two salmon so far. What are they?
Luke.
Kluk and ta.
Everyone know
Huh? Oh, you're talking about
There's 3 other types of salmon now. Got. Yeah, well. There's the sockeye. We gotta get 2 more in this house.
Teeth.
Teeth.
nah.
Salmon.
Toss.
Chas. Yeah, well. We got them all. It's all 5, right? Okay. Chuk. Ta. Got. Teeth. Chas. Now, all 5 of them, right, are claimed by clans.
Haha.
or maybe not the ta, maybe not. Okay. Kla,
Kla.
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 Here's another one that gets shifted by English. So there's all these nice, wonderful names. Something Kla, like the mother of something, right? Gooch Kla,
Gooch.
Pete Kla, Coon Kla. There's a whole bunch of those names. But a lot of times when we start losing our language, people will say claw, like the English word claw, right? So I like to say claw, claw, right? So we want to keep it with the TL sound. And as we're working with other people, we always want to correct with kindness. So if someone's saying their own name and they say claw, you don't want to be like, it's not claw, right? You don't want to come all hard with the corrections. You just want to privately, don't embarrass anybody. But, we do want to start speaking correct Tlingit, but we won't be mean about it, okay? Tlekatunk.
Tlekatunk.
Katunk.
Tlekatunk.
Tlekatunk.
So I'm making this one. So this one goes straight out as opposed to the with chuk. This one goes So some of the mechanics here. So your tongue kind of goes up right behind your teeth. It's pretty wide. It's not like a sharp point. It's a pretty wide, the way your tongue is. With just this L, without the T, you're gonna squish it out the sides. That's the mechanics, right? So the squishing up and then pushing out the sides gets you that L sound. This one, it's gonna shoot out this way. So what happens, so with all of these, with this apostrophe, again, you shut the lungs off.
Spicy?
No, I'm still eating it.
And then this one, you build up some pressure and then it kind of like it breaks out, right? So this you get e, e, e,
Eek.
sa, sa. T is pretty subtle, but it needs to be there, or else you're going to try and say seal, and people think you're going to say like a name, or resting. Sa,
Sa.
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 Sa,
Sa.
e,
Sa.
e.
See.
So like again, back to what your body is doing. No lungs, lungs, no lungs, lungs, right?
See.
One letter, two letters, three letters, four. That's a 4-letter word. So one of the things you can do as you're practicing Tlingit is you could take a look at these things and just try to, a big part of Tlingit is learning the names of stuff. What's this called? What's that called? What's this called? What's that called? And so one of the things you can do is start putting these into different parts of your brain. And so there's one philosophy of language learning that just says, let's put this in different parts of your brain. So you've got a listening part, right? So whenever you just hear somebody say tsats'i, tsats'i, it's a little bird, right? And it's any kind of bird, right? Just any bird that's kind of like smaller than a person's fist, I think. Otherwise, it's never mind. It's any bird. Sorry. So then, the second step you could do is you can write it. Like, let's see if I can remember how to spell this. Tsats'i, and you got it in your book. So don't look it up, but just try and spell it, and then spell it a few times, and then count the letters, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you're doing this sort of analytical side of your brain, right? And you just keep saying that name as you're writing it and as you're counting letters and stuff. Then draw a picture of a tsats'i. and just keep saying that name, and you're putting that name into the creative side of your brain. And then make a little sentence using English, but use the name for tsatsi, right? Like I walked outside and I saw tsatsi, it was singing. And if you can, use a sentence that's from your actual long-term memory, something from your life, because then you're putting that word into that part of your brain, right? So these are just different ways, because some people can just smash flashcards and they'll just remember that stuff. But if you have a hard time remembering some, try some of these different techniques so that you can keep practicing, because we're not just learning sounds, we're learning the names of these things. And so when you look outside, you could say, oh, because there's a deer in your yard, right? Okay, any questions? Everybody okay? So let me tell you about some time concepts in Tlingit, and we'll come back to this stuff quite a bit. So this is on the top, you get kind of small concepts of time, like in the course of a day or so. And then down below, you got bigger concepts of time, like all the way back to the beginning and all the way forward as far as you can go. So when we start thinking about how Tlingit thinks about time, it's really pretty fun. So in the course of a day, and there's 4 different, depends on where you're from, how you say the word day. You might say yakyi. You might say yagyi. You might say yagayi. And you might say yagi. Kind of depends on where you're from. And you got to ask folks who are, I don't know all the different ways that this goes, because I think if you're from the Chilkat area, you're probably closer to this. If you're from Teslin, you're probably closer to this. Cake, I'm not sure. It might be that one. Anyways, ask the speaker to just say, how do you say day? Like one day in Tlingit, or and see how they say it. So the day starts with the dawn. So when at the dawn, you got 2 basic ways to say it. When I zoom in, does it get bigger for you folks?
Yeah.
Okay. So this EI thing, A, is how most Northern Tlingits are going to say it. If you're from Cake or from Wrangell or Prince of Wales or Teslin or Carcross, you'll probably say it with the E. And so we'll do both here. So at the dawn, the daybreak, K-ah, K-ah.
It sounds like a pinched K when you're doing it. Is that what you're doing?
No, it's just further back. It's just, we call it the back K.
The glottal?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, geez.
So for our Cake peeping, K-ah,
Ki-a,
K-ah.
ki-a.
And then there's this other, like right when the sun breaks the horizon, like if you really want to pinpoint it, that's called the mouth of the dawn. And this is where the name Qeeq for cake comes from. Okay. So Northern folks would say Qeeq-a,
Kek-a,
Qeeq-a.
kek-a,
And our Southern folks would say Qeeq-a,
ki-a,
Qeeq-a.
ki-a.
Those are good. There's a few hard sounds in there, okay? So then once the day breaks, you're in this realm called Tsutat.
Sutat,
Tsutat.
sutat.
That's just the morning. You get to midday, Sitgao-san,
Sit-gao-san,
Sitgao-san.
sit-gao-san.
If you're from Tessin, you'd say Sitgam-san.
Mhm.
And then, so if you look at this, you've got Qi-a. But then when it starts to get dusk, you've got Qi-a.
He,
And so there's no underline there. So it's not going to be the, it's not that one. It's the jet airplane one. It's that one. Okay. So then when you have just the sort of evening time, most people are still awake, but the sun has either gone down or is going down. That gets you into Chana.
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 Then once it gets dark and most people are asleep, and old school Tlingits would say you're not supposed to be outside. But I'm not judging anybody. You might work the night shift. I don't know. Taught.
Tot.
Taught.
Tot.
And then you have midnight. Taught. Sit gao san.
Tot. Sit gao san.
Okay. So then
Wow.
we'll go forward and then we'll go backwards. There's two ways to say tomorrow. That's what this one is. It's tomorrow. This way, seqanin.
Seganen.
Seqanin.
Seganen.
And then seqan.
Segan.
Seqan.
Segan.
Now let's look at yesterday. Tatke.
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 And then last night, nistat.
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 And there are a few, like this is a few days from now, a few days ago, the other day, right? Or this actually, when you say kaya akadin, this would be the day after tomorrow, the day before yesterday, and then the other day. And long time ago, I think Tlingit wasn't that worried about like 4 days ago or 6 days from now. Like it was a little more fluid, but you can certainly do that stuff. But I think it gets a little bit forced, which is fun. And then I'll go over these kind of quick and we can come back. So when you go to the bottom, these are sort of bigger logical concepts. We're not talking about days and nights and stuff like that. We're talking about bigger concepts of time. So if we start kind of right here, there's a couple different ways to say right now. If you're using some kind of verb, then you're usually going to say yesu. And yesu could mean
Yes.
right now, or it could mean it's still happening, depending on how it's being used.
Yes.
If something is before it, it's
Ashukat.
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 And so some of you might recognize it looks like hashuka, because hashuka is from the same type of word, right? And then if it's after, you'll say adach or itnach or aka.
Oh.
So these are concepts of time. And so one thing that we want to learn how to do is tell stories. It could be big stories, the clan histories, the raven stories, or it could just be, hey, I got to tell you this thing that happened to me the other day. And you're still going to use a lot of similar types of things, which is when did it happen? And then this other thing happened, right? And then ye atune would be like something happened, right? So this is basically when the thing happened. And then we could talk about after it or before it.
I have a question.
Ah,
Because I wrote down it doc for it happened afterwards or later.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and so that's good.
Yep.
I'll keep them both. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's just, I should add it. There's 3 different ways you could say it. So itnach or itdach or itch. And then,
So Yesu is now,
yeah,
like ye dot.
yep. But yidat is not as closely tied. With Yesu, you're tying a verb in there.
Oh.
So Yesu is like, this thing is happening right now.
Oh.
Yidat is more like, well, nowadays, blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
They are both now, but they're just a little bit different.
I've been using ye dot wrong.
So it's totally fine. And yidat can also be kind of adjectives. So they'll say, we were listening to this Tlingit one time. I'll tell you guys where my son's name comes from. And so we're listening to this Raven story and we're translating it. And he said, so Raven poked his nose up in the sky and is hanging up there. And then they said, Kaja away. Kaja you do a sago at aya. You dati Tlingit klashas aus kudasawe kaja akwa wait a kakaya with the geet ye. So as we went through it, we were like translating it, and so Raven starts saying, let me land on Kaja. Let me land on Kaja. And then the storyteller kind of breaks out of the story and he says, it's called Kaja. It's Kaja, that's what it is. But the Tlingits of today, Yidati Tlingit, they don't know. And so then Nora, she turned to us and she said, well, what is it? And so I said, I'm a Tlingit of today, I don't know. And it's a kelp island. Like, so when kelp dries up and it becomes this little island, that's called Kaja. So it was cool because we had a bunch of people in there and she was the only one who knew that word. So I said, when I have a kid, I'm gonna name one of them Kaja. So
That's like on the way to Lutak when there's a low tide, huh?
yeah, and especially when it dries up and it gets all hard.
Mm-hmm.
They also call it Kushta Yaku
Kushtiyaku.
because sometimes
They're home.
they'll cruise around. It turns into their boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at them, it looks like a person in a boat, but it's a Kusha on a kelp bed.
Make it worse when they start crying like a baby too.
And it gets scary. Okay, so coming back, so here's Gao. Gao could mean clock, drum, time, hour, or bell. Okay, it could be any of those things. And so, but we get it from context. There's a few words like that where they can mean a whole bunch of different things. But when you say Gao Shukat, it's early. Gao, it's on time. Gao it, late. Right? And so same thing, in front of the drum or the clock, like the clock, following the clock.
Yes.
That's what it means, right? So then there's a couple other concepts and maybe we'll move on. We can come back to this stuff a whole bunch of times, right? So this one, ch'kluk, it means it's always happening. So whenever you say ch'kluk, your verb needs to be repetitive. Ch'kluk gao itk natich, always late, right? So then you, as opposed to yati, that verb needs to change to natich. And when they say ye natich, it means it's always that way, right? So it's something you're going to hear quite a bit. Chaklech is forever. And then there's a few, like, so you could say ziyagen, a while from now. Here's sekanen again. Ziyak is a little while ago. Kliatge, the other day. Kliatis, the other month. Kliatak, the other year. And you could get really specific. You could say 4 months ago, 3 years ago, but then you got to start throwing some verbs in there. Ch'ak is long ago. And for me, ch'ak, it's long enough that I really would have to think in order to count how long ago that was. All the way back as far as humans can remember. That's how big ch'ak is. And then you get into tlak. We know it happened, but no one can remember it. So that's getting into, that goes all the way back to the beginning. Okay. Everybody good? Any questions?
I have a question.
Uh,
So I know you have this down and you're telling us all these things, what they mean and the time and the place. Is there a reference place where we can actually get those translations?
yeah. And so it starts later in the beginning Tlingit workbook, especially like the last chapter. So And what I want to show you folks a bit of tonight is the newer edition of the Beginning Tlingit Workbook, which isn't out yet. And I want to talk about some of the changes. And one of the changes was moving, like when you got into the weather chapter and it would say like the weather yesterday, just like you did with the rain, the weather tomorrow, maybe it's going to be this. That actually, I moved that to the very end because then we'll start, once you start moving the verbs around, it gets really interesting and complicated. But yes, so there's, the answer is yes. There's, all of these are in the new dictionary and they've got some explanations to them. They're all in the Beginning Tlingit Workbook. And then this whole slideshow, you can download this whole slideshow and you keep it, use it, teach with it, change it, do whatever you want. And I will, maybe after we come back from our break, I'll walk you folks through where to find all the resources. So you could download them, keep them, share them, do whatever you want with them.
I just like the way that you have the literal translation, like as long ago as far as the humans can remember. I mean, that's what brings all the beauty into the way our language is.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, and then like the long, you could throw some, you could just really drag out those double A's, and then you go, oh, now we've got way back, and that can, and it's a really interesting word because it, depending on how you use it, it could also mean for a long time, which is really interesting, right? Okay. You okay? Tasa.
One question about clock. I've heard people here, some people say clock on, but Smitty always tells me it's clock on, like clock on. It almost sounds like clock on.
So tuck is, it keeps happening, right?
Mhm.
Tuck on is like the eternal village.
Yeah. But have you ever heard, is clock like that? Is there like ever a U between that? Or am I just hearing it wrong?
This one, so you see this one here? So this one is a different one. So tuck, and this is where it gets tricky with Tlingit. So tuck is like repeatedly, always, right? Keeps happening. Clock is long, ancient, long ago.
Oh, I
So
see.
this is where, if you turn, you could turn this. So if you say Tlagu Konkiyan, those people, they were way back before we could remember. That's getting into our ancestors, but it's way back before we can even remember what we were like. Like, so Chok, for me, Chok is like all the clan migrations. We could still talk about it. We still know that stuff. Why did we leave? A fight, right? You know, but then when you go Tlak, we know that we were there. That's getting into the flood. Before, like when we probably came up from the south, that's all stuff where we know what happened, but those details are fuzzy. And that even includes, and so it gets really interesting because you could say Kutlak, and that means you're telling these ancient stories. So that's this one. And then that one can turn into a GU, Tlagu. And then there's a related word, Tlagu, which is like, it's really old. And especially like a really old, like if you have an old broken down boat that's just sitting in the village, it's Tlagu. It's just old and broken down. And so sometimes they'll say that and they'll just be laughing, you know, because they might be teasing each other about it. Be careful, tease people about being old and Tlingit, just, that's delicate territory. I used to work with this elder a lot, and his wife's sister came over and he said, "What's the way, Shawachan?" And she said, "What's that mean?" And he said, "What's up, old lady?" And ooh, she glared at me. And I said, "I'm sorry, I just translated that. I'm sorry." So,
You know, my uncle Ed Warren once told me, he said, "Young man, I'm going to tell you and share something with you that's important for you to remember. Never call me Kashan. Always refer to me as Wu Wadi Ka." He goes, "That's who I am." And he's and so have you heard people want to be referred to as like bu what de what? Like he said that he's still active.
Yeah, so you'd usually say yan wat. So yan wat literally means done growing. But that's the word that we usually use for an elder. Shanuk is a like a little old person, but again with the old you gotta be careful, because you could say yin desheni the ones who are getting old, and then if it's the old people they could talk about themselves being old, but then you don't go. It's sort of like well, I remember my auntie, she was sharing with us, she said her mom was like, oh, speak Tlingit. And she was just like, oh, she was like, my knee hurts and my back hurts. And they're all just laughing because like, that's what she was hearing, like some of the older people say. And so, yeah, it's related to the kinship chart where there's a bunch of teasing and stuff, but it can't really go up. So then you're going to get the scolding of a lifetime. So I warned you. Just remember, I warned you all. Okay.
Jeez.
Let's take 5 and we'll come back. We'll finish this and then we'll move into, we'll go over some of the stuff in the opening chapters of the beginning Tlingit workbook.
I have a quick question.
Uh,
I think I've asked it before, and I maybe it's just a double meaning, or maybe I forgot your answer. But the difference between clock, the time reference, and fast.
oh, yeah, okay. Let me consult the dictionary.
I just put the dictionary up too, and I didn't see the time reference, but I saw the fast reference.
Yeah. That's the tone, right? So let me show you folks. So looking stuff up in the dictionary. So here is the TL section. So this is a new dictionary, probably going to be a print version coming out before the year ends. But you can certainly download it. I just keep updating it and add stuff and fix stuff. There's all kinds of errors in here. People give me a hard time about it. But on the left, depending on what you're viewing this with, but there's a table of contents, so you can click into the DL, the G. So we'll go down to the TL. And then this gets us here to Tlagu. So Tlagu is ancient or forever. Tlagu Kwonsai. And then we get Tlagu Kwanki, our eternal ones, our ancient people. And so the way this dictionary is alphabetized is a little different than some of the other ones, just because basically we're going to do short and low, then we'll do short and high right there. So there's tlak for all the time, always. And you'll usually hear that as cheklak. And then it's going to do the long low. So then we'll go up to, so then we'll get clock for fast. And so that's right there. Where is the, oh, maybe, do I not have it in here? Hold on. Clock on, clock, huh, okay. So I don't have clock in here. Okay, that's interesting. You have to fix that. So that's probably why. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure that out. I thought one of them was low tone. Clock day. Okay. I'll have an answer next week. I gotta investigate that a little bit more. Thanks for pointing that out.
I have it on my license plate, so I just want to make sure I got it right.
Oh, right. Once the cops start learning Tlingit, they're just gonna follow you around now. So.
They already do.
Okay. Yeah, I used to have my name on my license plate, but then I changed it because I'm like, what if I cut somebody off? Or something, you know, they're like, ah, there he is. Rotten Khune. Okay, take 5. We'll be back.
Hi. I'm on my break, my class break. I'm taking Tlingit language. I'm taking Tlingit language at night time. Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, hold on. Oh, I put it on mute by accident. I'm taking Tlingit language at 2 nights a week. I know, I'm excited. But I'll be done in a little while. Why? How you doing? The fish look good. I went over there. Really? Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. Oh, really? Wow. Wow.
Kusine, I'm glad you changed your name.
Yes, I forgot to do it earlier.
It looks good.
Oh, you want me to call you after my class is done? Okay. Okay. All right. I have important conversations about our fish
Okay.
in the smokehouse. No.
That's important.
Smokehouse time is prime time. Can't fall asleep.
Oh no, not when you're on guard duty.
Mm-hmm.
I still got about 25 more gallons of hooligans that I'm going to finish off.
Oh,
Make some, so I can send some of that over, bro.
okay.
I need more room in my freezer.
Sheesh.
Me and Steph were going to do all that stuff together. She might still come do some of it if she has the time.
Okay. All right, gang. Let's go back into our sounds. And so we did time. I'm gonna look Jinkasi, but when you have clock right before a verb, that's when it's the fast one, right? That's one of the ways that you'll know, because that clock is an adverb. Although you can also add, there's a number of things you can add day right after it and it becomes a command, right? So clock day is hurry up, right? Okay. So now let's go to the pizza burning zone. We're going to do some sounds up here. There's quite a few. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yuck.
And this one is fallen out of almost all Tlingit everywhere, except for Teslin and maybe one or two speakers in Carcross. The older people in Yakutat, like maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you'd hear it there as well. When you listen to really old speakers, you'll hear it a lot. So we write it as a Y with 2 dots over it. And you're gonna see it sometimes because we'll mark, nowadays it usually marks a sound where it could be either a Y or a W, and it might go back and forth. But what this one used to sound like was ng. So it's a nasal sound. It's almost like you're gonna make an N sound through your nose, basically.
Yes.
So if you put this on a word, you would have nine.
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 So
Nine.
the way you'll hear this, if you go to Teslin and you speak with the speakers there, does anybody know how to tell a bunch of people to stand up? How do you tell people to stand up?
Guide a knock.
Guide a knock, right? So if you go to Teslin though, they'll say ging de knock. So that that sound is clearly in Teslin, right? Clearly there. But with all other Tlingit, it's pretty much gone.
Is that when you say pretty much gone, is it just because we are relearning rather than carrying on?
That's a good question.
No.
I think it's just language change myself. But so you'll see a whole bunch of words. Like there's these words like sanya, henya. So a lot of those nya sounds, that's what it has changed to. So it'll either become nya, or it'll become yina, or it'll just become a Y or a W. And so there's a couple other things. There's just some patterns that the old Tlingit used to have. And I think it's probably just a similar thing like in English. If you go back far enough, it just starts to sound really different. And so my thought, it's not really a language loss thing, but it could be, you know, because we have some folks who really want to bring it back. But I say, if you go to Teslin, it's just clearly there. But there's these things like you used to say, like anybody know how to say her child? Do yedi, right?
Do yadi.
But the old speakers, they would say do wadi. And so it would change to a W because the sound right before it. And so I think it's just language change, but it's something to note. There's stuff like the Tanta dialect is totally gone. And that's a language loss thing, right? This sound being gone is just, it's something to know. And it's something to, if you look at this book of Raven stories that's coming out, you'll see this in a whole bunch of places. We'll write it with the Y with the 2 dots over it. And if you listen to them, you'll hear them say it. Like some of them, they even say, nyang, like they'll say it that way. Ga.
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 Gooch.
Gooch.
Ka.
Ka.
Cost.
Cost.
Ka.
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 Incheyi.
Incheyi.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-letter word, right? So again, like just one sound, one symbol, one sound, one symbol, right? Ha.
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 So this one is, it's not the falling asleep, deep snoring sound. This is the jet airplane, the cappuccino machine, the wind, all of those things, but not. Okay, we have to be very clear that we're not going back there yet. It's all just same spot as the K. So if you make a K sound, you're gonna blow air through that same spot. It's kind of a scraping sound. Husha,
Khasha.
husha.
Khasha.
So here's those two A's again. So hush is a verb to cut or to saw. So without your lungs, you get So someone said it's almost like you got the cappuccino machine going, and then you suddenly turn it off. This is one of the trickier sounds in Tlingit, I think. So if this sound is hard for you, try not to say things like, I can't make that one. But instead just say, ooh, that one's hard for me. You gotta have some spit on your tongue, and you're gonna push, you're not gonna use your lungs, you're gonna use the air in your throat to push this sound out. So you should be walking around practicing, just going, see how many you can make before you have to take a breath, because you got to hold your breath while making this sound. And so this is one that it makes your mouth tired, but it's good practice. And you're going to find it at the end of quite a few words. Like this is to locate something somewhere or to make things plural. Like, so you'll notice that a little bit later.
Would you say it coming close to the uvula in the back when you're making that sound?
No, it's the exact same spot as when you're making a regular K. It's at the roof of the mouth. We're going to go back there though, and we're going to make something without our lungs, and those are going to be the more tricky ones. So here's a word that has it in there. Water. Every time you see one of these, you just say its name, or you see a book or a piece of paper, you'll say, sandpaper, that's got three. Right? Okay. Okay. So let's take a break from the sounds and just work on some how are you questions, right? So this is like it's a greeting, a bit of a greeting. Two ways you could say it. So here's the coastal version and the inland version. Wasa'iati.
Masaiati.
Sayati.
Masa'iati.
Masaiati.
So we're going to learn about, how you put questions together. And I'm sure a lot of you know. Wasa, dasa, kunsa, guhsa, adusa, right? So this sa part is a big part of asking a question. But the part that's not about putting a question together, in English, this is a question. You cannot do that in Tlingit, right? So like if you wanted to say, I'm pretty sure his name is Bill. You don't want to go, Bill, you do a sa, right? You can't do that. There's other ways, lots of other ways we can, but Tlingit will always ask questions with putting extra things in there, right? So it's either going to be one of these something plus sa, or ga, or kshe, or giwe. There's a few different ways to do it, and you can express doubt. But so as we're practicing Tlingit, if I were going to say like, what's this thing called? You don't want to go, Husha, right? You shouldn't do that. You just got to blast through it. Husha, guaxier. And then you can throw a guaxier in there at the end, which is maybe, right? So, and we'll do a thing next week on a whole bunch of question examples. I'll show you like a bunch of what questions, where, how, why, a whole bunch of questions like that. But this one is, how are you? Wasa ieti. How are you? So we got three kind of categories. We got smiley face, what was it, stoic face? I don't know. And then frowny face. And then these are shorter ways, and there's a little bit longer ways. Well, I'll show you both. So if someone says wasa ieti, and you're doing great, and you want to say so, you could say yuck a.
Yuck. Hey.
And you could say I'm good, and that would you would throw khat right in front of it. So you'd say khat yuck a.
Had yuck.
Khat yuck a.
Had yuck.
But now, whenever you see something and you want to say good, great, awesome, fabulous, fantastic, wonderful, just say yuck a. Right now, you could just make that switch, because part of becoming a speaker of a language is just using it. And so find some things that you can substitute. The people around you will have to come along on part of the journey, right? But if something great happens and you said yuck a, everyone's not going to go, what does that mean, right? They'll figure it out.
Have you ever come across like elders that find it offensive when you say "Chachuk eh"?
I've been told that you got to be kind of careful, because it could be interpreted as I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good at this, you know. But I think in the context, most people would understand what you're trying to say. But that gets us to the second one. So the second one is I feel good, and there's nothing wrong with ever saying that.
Is that to woo like not a physical feeling, but the inside, how you feel in the inside?
So this word to woo,
To
I would interpret that as feelings, emotions, intention, desire, spirit. I think it could be any of those things. And so it's one of those ones in Tlingit that's kind of hard to translate over, because there's different ways I could use it too. So we use this in a lot of emotion type of things. So ach is my, to woo. And you can interpret that however you want. Depends how it's being used. And then you get yuck a. So like, I feel good. I feel happy. I feel not feel bad. You can say ach tu woo yanik. My feelings are sick, and that means I'm sad. And then, but if I'd work with some of the old folks, and we would translate stuff, which is really hard, like translate this sentence into Tlingit. And so one of them, she would say it, and then she'd turn to her translating partner, and she'd say, "Wasa itu wuch?" And that means, what do you think about it? But it's the same, it's using this word just a little bit differently. So tu wu is a really neat word in Tlingit. Yeah. So I feel good. Ach tu wu yuk e.
woo.
Ach,
Okay.
tu yak e.
Ach tu wu yuk e.
Ach, tu yak e.
Okay.
I feel. Ach tu wu sagu.
Ach,
To
tu
woo sigu.
Ach tu wu sagu.
Ach,
To
tu
woo sigu.
So now we're going to get into sometimes they're kind of non-answers, but the first one kind of isn't. So we'll say this one, the short version first. Keshwasa.
Kleshwasa.
Keshwasa.
Kleshwasa.
And then What do you guys think this uti thing is?
I hear Joe saying that all the time. Is that how it goes?
Yep. So the uti is the negative form of yati. So this shows you when Tlingit verbs, when it starts going negative, the whole verb changes, right? Because in English you could say is not, be, I don't know, isn't being, I don't know. But in this case, uti is the negative version of yati.
Is that the same as like that ute? Is it like ya'at, that at part?
Ya'at is in what?
Like wasa ya'at anin.
Oh, wasa at nanin. That one is wasa at nanin is like what's happening. So that one's different.
It's not the same at.
No, not they're different.
Okay.
But then, and so keshwasa on its own means it's okay. And it's an interesting thing because we'll learn about like wasa, like dasa is what is a what type of question. Kesh dasa is nothing. So by that same logic, you'd think keshwasa should be not how, but it's just it's a special thing. Once you put those three words together, it means it's okay. And there's a bunch of different ways that this could be used. For example, let's say we know Tlingit and we're kind of teasing each other and someone teases me and it hurts my feelings. And then they might really realize they did something wrong and then really apologize. Forgive me, I don't want you to be sad. And then I might say, it's okay. And now, boom, it's over. It's totally over. So this is a very powerful phrase in Tlingit. And I've seen it used and I've used it in ways like that. Somebody really did hurt my feelings and they apologized, they're crying. And I said, and from a Tlingit perspective, that means we're not going to bring this up again because it's fine, right? It could also mean it's okay. You're like, I could say, keshwasa ikukwati. And that means nothing bad is going to happen to you. So it's a really interesting one. You'll see it used quite a bit. But keshwasa uti. And then you could also say, you could put a chat right there. Keshwasa chat uti. I'm okay. I'm fine. Right? Here's another response. Chachataya.
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 Anybody know how to interpret that one?
Yeah.
I am just me. That's a fun response to how are you, right? It's almost a none of your business type of thing. But I know some elders like Kaseach Selena Everson. Whenever I said, what's that tea? Just like, chachataya, and she'd just laugh. And here's a similar one. Chushugu.
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 The same. So again, it's a bit of a non-answer. I'll give you the insider tip. When I used to say this to Johnny Marks, he used to say, Yisaku oosh, and then he would just laugh, which is if you only knew, and then he would just laugh, right? So it's fun, like it's a dynamic language. You can say and do lots of things. The way you greet people and respond to this sometimes depends on how well you know people, right? Okay, which gets us to the bad part. And whenever we're practicing this stuff, I always want to just say, I don't want anybody to feel bad. We don't want to feel bad. We don't want to call any kind of energy towards us. We're just practicing how to say this stuff. So yak'e is good. The opposite of that is bad, terrible, horrible, however you want to think of it. And the way we say that is kesh ushke.
Ush,
Kesh ushke.
ush,
Kesh ushke. So this on its own means it or she or he is bad, right? And this isn't like not good. This is really bad. Depending on how you're using it. So same thing, like something good happens, you say, okay. Something really bad happens, you say, kesh ushke. But this could also mean, and so you don't really usually want to put the chat into this one because you might be declaring yourself as evil. Right? And so you could say if you want to, but as far as when people hear you say that, they might be like, I'm not going to hang out with you. It's gonna get me into trouble. And then I feel awful. Kesh ach tu ushke.
Kesh ach tu ushke.
Kesh ach tu ushke.
Ach, tu, ushke.
Ushke.
And then I'm unhappy. Kesh ach tushke.
Kesh,
Kesh ach tushke.
Kesh ach tushke.
kesh,
Kesh
ach.
ach tushke.
Okay. Any questions about those? Okay. So hellos and goodbyes. So this one, we heard, we did yake already. So let's do it one more time. Yake.
Yake.
Then we're going to do the second one. But I'm going to talk you through it first. So this is a verb. This is also a verb that's tied to another verb. Okay, and so when you tie two verbs together, one of them will go through some changes. In this case, the most common thing is it's going to get this little I on it, which might be a U sometimes. So if I were just to say, I see you, let me show you folks what that would look like. So just to say, I see you, I would say, ich sitting.
Ich sitting.
Ich
Sitting.
Ich sitting.
So right here is a W, but there is no vowel there. A lot of people will want to say ichwasatin, or they want to put something ichosatin. They want something to be there. But what really is going on, if we isolate this part, you're going right in the middle of the word. Right in the middle. Vowel, no vowel, vowel.
Wow.
Okay? So, if,
If,
sit,
sitting.
teen. So that's how that thing, if you break it into its little parts. And one of the things that I like to do just to show folks, Tlingit is often a whole bunch of little parts that smash together. And there's a whole bunch of Native American languages that work like that. So sometimes what I like to show people is what the parts are that are in there. Oops. And then we'll talk about what these things do, because eventually you're going to get to a point where your brain is going to put all these things together and then smash them. And you're going to know, to speak Tlingit, you have to start by memorizing a whole bunch of stuff. That's what this is called. That's what this phrase is. I could fill in the blank here. So I could say, achtuasagu is I want or I like. Now I could say, kahwe achtuasagu, hin achtuasagu, dana achtuasagu, right? I want the coffee, the water, the money. So, but that's memorization. If you want to start talking, you're going to have to move into pattern building. And it's a tricky part, but we're going to look at lots of pictures. We're going to do lots of different exercises and stuff to get that into our mind. But I want to walk you through what these little parts are. So this is you as an object. This thing is going to happen to you, whoever I'm talking to, not just you, whoever you are, right? The y part, this is what we call a perfective marker. That means we're talking about this verb in terms of whether or not it has happened. So when you said siyo dak wusitan, this is the w that's attached onto it. The cha part means I am doing. I am doing. Whoever's talking, I'm talking about them doing it. Chachash, I'm cutting. Chacha, I'm eating. Chadana, I'm drinking. Right? Si, this is a classifier. Every verb has a classifier. And this is where Tlingit gets pretty complex. The classifier shows you what the verb does. And so there's a bunch of things to sort of look at there. And we're going to look at them this semester. But just for now, just know that it's there. And then, teen is the verb root, which means sight or seeing. Right? So then these all combine in one word to say, I saw you. You, I saw is the kind of word order, okay? So when we combine that, now this whole thing, everybody say, yake,
Yake.
ichsatini,
Ichsatini.
Satini.
yake, ichsatini,
Yake. Ichsatini.
yake, ichsatini.
Yake. Ichsatini.
Okay. So again, this first part, I'm going to actually erase this stuff. And I'll show you lots of things later where we tease it apart. If you look at the beginning Tlingit workbook, it shows you lots of these things that are broken apart like this. But we don't have to do it all, but it's just showing you, like, get ready because we're going to do a bunch of that stuff. But this on its own, so if we just look at the prefix, right, everything before the root, you have ichsa,
Ichsa.
ichsa,
Ichsa.
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 So that is, it's good to see you. Another way you can say hi to somebody, wa'e akwe,
Wa'e akwe.
wa'e akwe. And how do we interpret that? What does that literally mean?
Is it you?
Is that you?
Oh,
And this is how we say hi to people quite a bit. And it could be like I haven't seen you in a while, or it could be I'm kind of just messing around. But it's a funny thing, right? Because you could say, it's me. Or you could say, I don't know. Or you could say, yeah, I'm still me, right? So there's a bunch of ways you could respond to this. I was at the Native Hospital in Anchorage, and it said, they had this big poster, and it said, how to say hello in Alaska's languages. And for Tlingit, they had wa'e'ekwe. And so I looked, I was like, not exactly, but it's not wrong either. And then here's something that the kids say every day in school. It's so neat. We'll do this in chunks, and I'll tell you what it says. S, ha,
Ha.
ka,
Ka.
kewa'a.
Kewa'a.
So do you folks recognize anything in there? And if so, what?
Sue again.
Yeah, Sue. So Sue, low tone, usually popping up before the verb, means again. High tone means also. They're different words. What else?
Haka is honest.
Ha-ka is on us, right? And so this is, you could say, ha-ka siu daku satan. It rained on us, right? on us.
And then isn't that dawn?
Yeah, so from qe'a, same thing. It could be right in the front. So qewa'a means the day broke on us again. And there's,
Oh,
like it dawned on us. And this is a really neat thing to say to folks because also there's the raven and the box of daylight story. And he went down to the Nas and he was sitting there watching. And this is where the story gets really interesting because the real old versions, he's watching these people, tiga, they're dip knitting driftwood. I don't know why they were dip knitting driftwood, but he was watching them dip knit driftwood. And then he said, "Achait I woo, gwashi ka kain kwakuts," or gwashi ka an kwakuts. There it is. So he said, "Send something up for me to eat, or I just might break the daylight on you, because the sun hasn't come out yet." And I don't even know. It's such a neat story when you really look at the old versions of it, because he didn't even know those boxes were in there, I don't think. But maybe he did, I don't know. Okay, so then when they're gonna take off. So here's another thing where I want us to control I think there's English patterns that come into Tlingit. Because people in English say, "See you later." And so people say, "Suye kwasatin." And so, but we want to catch the tone is right there at the end. So here's "s" for again. "S."
S.
Yay.
Yay.
Ik kwasatin.
Ikwasatin.
Ik kwasatin.
Ikwasatin.
So Northwest Coast languages are famous for having like repeating consonants, right? And so here you get k-kwa. But this on its own, k-kwa, always I am going to. K-kwagut, I'm gonna go. K-kwacha, I'm gonna eat. K-kwadana, I'm gonna drink it, right? So that's what the k-kwa is. And then here's I for you again, same you as right over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I will see you again. Suye ikwasatin.
Ikwasatin.
And what about this one? Wushe gachtustin.
Gachtustin.
Wushe gachtustin.
Wushiye gachtustin.
And how do we interpret this one?
Each other again.
We'll see each other, right? And so it's just putting it into the future.
Oh,
So here's another future thing. Gachtu is we're gonna, every time. Ade gachtu at, we're gonna go there. Gachtu saku, we're gonna know it, right? So gachtu is we're gonna, kukwa is I'm gonna. The whoosh or whoosh, it could be either way, it depends. When that comes immediately before the verb, that means doing the verb to each other. If you say whoosh, whoosh in, doing the verb together. So it's a little bit different. Say whoochin gachtucha, we're gonna eat together. Whoosh gachtudecha, we're gonna eat each other. Very different conversation, right? So then there's some things that you'll learn that why some things change. Then a simple way to say goodbye is this literally means later. Like later, this is gonna happen or whatever. Ziyagen.
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 Diagen.
And my kids, we're always in negotiations about screen time and video games. And my 5-year-old is like, I want to play video games. I'm like, Ziyagen. Like, does that mean tomorrow? And he always says that. I'm like, like, he's like, is it later? I was like, yeah. He's pretty fun because he says, I don't know what that means in Tlingit. That's what he says to me too. It's pretty fun.
But Ziagan, would you say that like to say like see you later?
It's a slang thing, but I hear a lot of people say it. So it's a lot like saying the English, like I've got an auntie and she's like 86 years old or something. I called her on the phone. I was like, all right, auntie, well, I'm going to take off. She goes, later. And then she hung up. So it's exactly like that.
Okay.
In a sentence, you might say, Ziagan, we're going to go to the store later. It just means after a while. Okay, let's power through the rest of these sounds. And then next week when we come back, we'll have done the sounds. If there's particular sounds you want to work on, how do you say alligator? I don't know if we came up with a name. So tsinche is a lizard. And so maybe everything just sort of branches off of that. But it's got some, we were calling it.
Harasenge.
It's like she'uchu is like to have teeth. I'll have to see. I'll have to review my notes. I don't know if we ever came up with a word for that or not. Oh, maybe it's
Plain singer.
right? Because then we gotta like, oh, there it is. Yeah. She'uchu tsinche plain. I'll put it in the chat. So that is a big toothy lizard. Oh, log with teeth. Yeah. She'uchu. Well, I guess it's like Nashashadi is a piece of driftwood that's floating.
Okay.
Nahashadi could be another fun name for it. Okay. Good question.
Are you gonna explain the difference in the classifiers? Because there's did you say there's 4 classifiers? Is that the one with the?
There's 4 classifier groups.
Is that something we're gonna go over in the future, or is that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably start next week, and I'm gonna, when we get to the classifier, like I'm just gonna keep explaining it, and then we're gonna look at some examples. Yeah, we will certainly get this. So that, yeah, like for example, when you see she'uchu, the she class, it's an L group classifier. A lot of times that's used to say it has this thing. Like she'uchu means it's teethed. For example, shagushihit is there was a place, it's a house with a dorsal fin, right? You could say shagukus ah, it's a hat with ears. So the sh part, sometimes like shagus, there's clouds out in this space. It has clouds, it's clouded. So it's pretty fun the way it works, because that's why you'll see like shijini is like it has arms, right? Shijini, it has no arms. It's a vest. Okay, but yeah, we will talk about it, and we're going to break it down, and I want everybody to understand basically how it works. It does a whole bunch of stuff for us in a verb, but yeah. Okay, sheesh. Washa.
Wahla.
Washa.
So there's the one. In this case, gwash is a verb root for stabbing, beating a drum, and hitting things, which in Tlingit, I guess, are all the same thing. Like, it's actually even the same verb. So if you said, "Aka aweh wakwash," I want some details, because I'm like, okay, did you hit a drum? Did you stab somebody? Punch them? Those are three different narratives.
That's like the English word strike, like to strike something.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could strike a match. That wasn't too bad, right? But if you struck someone, again, we might need to talk about this.
What about kachok?
Is
Kachok.
to carve.
That's what it is. Could it also be used as like someone's gonna stab you?
I don't think so. Unless if you were a log, then they were gonna come at you with a scoop chisel.
Mm.
But yeah, gouache is what I would expect for stabbing. And so with Tlingit, sometimes when those words have multiple meanings, you just got to do a little bit of work. You got to throw like a knife in there or something, or a drumstick, you know.
Or a log with teeth, maybe.
Yeah, log with teeth. You're gonna play it like a drum. Wow, okay. It's not gonna last
Gotta
very
hit
long.
with sound with the button and call it gardening.
Okay. Kwa.
Kwa.
On Quayi.
On Quay.
So
Hey,
Quay is marker. So on Quay, land marker. Each Quay, reef marker.
Each Quay.
When this KW is at the end, ak,
Ak.
yak,
yeah.
Yak.
kwa,
Kwa.
kwat,
Kwat.
kwat,
Kwat.
ak. There's gotta be that little at the end. Zisk.
Zisk.
For Klukwan, for a lot of speakers in Klukwan, zisk is an owl with the tufted owl, and sisk is a moose. For everybody else, other way around. But it's a dialect thing, right? It's just it's a dialect thing. So if you're not careful or you're in Klukwan, you're like, they'll be like, don't go owl hunting. Man, you shoot those owls, it's over for you. Don't shoot any owls.
I like how Marcia explains it. She says, we live closer to the moose, so I think we're right.
Well, I go to Tesla and they say zisk. So, but dialect is never a right or wrong question. I tease a lot and we tease a lot. Like I was up there in Tesla, I was teasing them a lot about the M's and stuff. But it's fun, and this is where it's fun. So if you go to Klukwan, you should be skilled enough that you could just switch it. You could just switch it. You could talk to people and you can respect the way they talk, and it's fun. When I talk to the old people, they were always curious about it. Like, oh yeah, they call it keish tish up there. They're talking about moccasins, right?
Mm-hmm. Martha used to always have these different, like we say wasaku, she say wasiku, always with the M's too.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Saku.
Saku.
Okay. Hua. Huasta.
Kwasta.
Huasta.
Kwasta. Ak.
Gah.
Gak.
Gah.
Gak.
So with that W, it just gets that little bit of air that blows through. Hua. Quan.
Kwan. Kwan.
On.
Z.
Zeke.
Z.
Zeke.
Okay.
All right. Time.
Yeah. So we got 3 minutes left. So we'll come back and we'll start here on Tuesday. And at the end of this slideshow, we do get into some of the grammar stuff, and I just want to give you an overview. We say, get ready for conversations about this stuff. So you've got Oh, there's so much stuff in a Tlingit verb. It's such a descriptive language. It's a language that loves categories. It's a language that, like we just invent verbs for very specific things, like cooking herring eggs. There's a verb for cooking herring eggs, right? Because you don't cook those any old way. I messed them up one time. My uncle was like, "Who cooked these?" And so like, and so that we got a verb for hitting the bushes to knock the berries off of them. We got a verb just for that. And so Tlingit makes lots of verbs for lots of specific things. Swimming, there's like 20 different verbs for swimming. And it depends how you're swimming. So it's one is just remembering that Tlingit loves categories. It loves it. And so if you like to organize stuff, Tlingit is for you, because it's like, it's one of those types of things. It goes in that box, right? But we will talk about all this stuff, and I want to give you folks lots of images, lots of examples, and just really make sure that you know that you can do it. You could speak this language. You can go from wherever you started. You can go further than you are now, and it doesn't mean that it will make sense to you. Like when you look at this, all these different components will make sense, and there's going to reach a point where you're going to think about this stuff, because this is what puts people into these really advanced categories. When you listen to those folks who can really speak Tlingit well, all this stuff and much more is just instantly happening in their brains. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see how much stuff without ever writing stuff down. This was never written down. And all of this was encoded into people's minds. It blows me away all the time. And then we'll look at examples so I can walk you through some stuff so you'll see why would this classifier change, because it will change, but it has to stay in these little boxes. And so there'll be more to come. And bring your questions as we get started more and more and we start getting into a rhythm of things. I would especially like you to take the weekend break and just practice putting together a few things to share with us when we start on Tuesday. So just give us, it doesn't have to be a big, long speech of your life. Just say some stuff. Say, yeah, I was really hoping to talk about this thing. So I tried to put it together. And sometimes we'll just listen and sometimes we'll give some pointers. So, okay, ganchish hati ati, hucha yachana, yigoya juan, yituyeti. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, we could talk about that. You want to stay on for an extra minute? Chance? Okay. Okay. So Klasatin, Wushegachtustin, Gudashish.
Ganashish.
To your are you with somebody right now, brother man?
I will be, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll try to catch you another time. Some point when we have a chance, if you can catch up with me about what we were talking about that one day that I'd like to do.
Yeah, I'll send you a message. We'll set up a little, set up a chat.
I'll have to make damn sure to send you that hooligan oil with those hooligans before you start not trusting me, my brother man.
We're recording. This is part of our oral tradition.
No. All right, brother man. I'll see you later.
Okay.